Hello friends, and welcome to the Cold War Prepper. My name is Lee. Today's going to be a little bit off key for me. I try to stay away from politics, but the elections really have me befuddled, and so I want to share some thoughts with you. So I'm going to read you one thing out of the Bible, just for discernment, and it applies to all of us. And then from that point, I'm going to give you a couple books, and we're going to talk about those, and we're going to talk about my feelings about what happened with this election. So this can either be Matthew 24 or Luke 21. I'm going to give you the Luke 21 version. It's the same thing, basically. And this is Luke 21, verses 7 through 11. And so let me put my eyes on. It says, "Then they asked him, 'Father, when will this happen?'" And we're talking about the end times. "And what sign will there be when all these things are about to happen?" And he answered, "See that you be not deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and the time has come. Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for such things must happen first, but it will not be immediately the end." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be powerful earthquakes, famines, and plagues from place to place, and awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the skies." Now I'm reading the New American Version translation, and this is the Catholic Bible. So we do have the 6 books of the Apocrypha in the Old Testament that were discarded by Luther. We also have an extra chapter of Daniel that was discarded by Luther. We have Luther also got rid of 6 books of the New Testament, but John Wesley brought them all back. So the Protestant Bible and the Catholic Bible are almost exactly the same for the New Testament, with the exception of Lutherans. Lutherans are still minus 6 books. And then in the Old Testament, we have the 6 books that Jesus would have taught to. Matter of fact, there are a couple quotes he says that are actually from Maccabees. And but anyhow, that's what I read from. So that's Luke 21 and Matthew 24, the 2 that you can read that from. So are there wars and rumors of wars? You bet. Ethiopia's got an open war going. We've got China. That always confuses me. CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And remember that I'm a Russian. I worked Russian intelligence, so at that time it was a CCCP, is the way it appeared. But in Cyrillic, those are actually SSSR, Soyuz Sovietskich Socialisticheskich Respublik. SSSR, but so when I see CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, I always think SSR, but that's my problem. But anyhow, we got all kinds of strange things going on besides what's going on in Europe, and that's happening. We've had several 6-point or higher. I think we've had at least 4 7-point or higher earthquakes just in the last 24 hours, especially around Tonga, and Peru had one, I think 7.1. So we've got all kinds of major earthquakes going on. We've got some minor tremors. We got some 2s and 3s happening in the Yellowstone caldera. We've also got them in the Long Valley caldera. We've got 2s and 3s happening in the New Madrid fault line area. So it looks like there's a lot of tectonic activity taking place, and that's mentioned in the Bible. So there's an awful lot of stuff that supports it. Of course, we had our lockdown for a year. With that, we've got a pending famine. They say that the whole world's going to be have a food shortage here in the near future. I think prophecy is happening. It's happening right before our eyes. But what we want to talk about is, how do we stop it, or can we? And so, one of the things that really disheartened me was this past election on Tuesday. 74% of the population said that we're going the wrong direction, but yet those same people who said that we're going the wrong direction voted the people back in who are taking us in that direction. That makes no sense to me. You would think that if we're going the wrong direction, we would want to change direction with a new representative. But that didn't happen. And that's really, really confusing. So please don't think I'm a Republican. I'm not. I am what's called a constitutionalist. Very small political party, unfortunately. I think we and the libertarians vie and kind of support each other. We have a tendency to lean right rather than leaning left, although there are certain topics that we do lean left on. We believe in individual rights. You can do what you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else, and more power to you. And I think the Republicans agree with that. If you want to do it in the privacy of your own home, do it. Just don't flaunt it in public, and don't teach it to our children. And that's kind of where I am. We all have our rights, and we have to honor those rights. And so, when we talk about that, I'll put a link to this. I want to quote this. So, David Kleonskousen infiltrated the Communist Party of the United States in 1947. And then back in 1952 and on, he started working on producing this book. And in it, he has the 74 goals of the Communist Party. And so I want to read to you a couple of them. Goal number 13, do away with all loyalty oaths. So when's the last time you said the Pledge of Allegiance? It's kind of a loyalty oath. Goal number 15. Goal number 15, capture one or both of the political parties in the United States. I think we've seen that. They elected a guy who can't put a sentence together, who can't answer a question, who is medically incapable of performing the job, but he was elected because of his party affiliation. Solely because of his party affiliation. That's this Cap 15, capturing that party. Number 17, get control of the schools. This one really ticks me off because this is so flagrant. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and other current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Another word for that is dumb the people down. Get control of teachers' unions and associations. Put the party line in textbooks. What's being taught, like critical race theory and stuff like that, they're not teaching history. They're teaching theory that is totally disproven. Who thinks that in 1492 the sole reason that we were found was so we could establish a slave trade country? And that's what's being taught. It's crazy. We need to get back to the truth and away from some of this, what are we going to call it? Crazy stuff that's being put out there. Number 20, infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, and policy-making positions. Number 21, gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and pictures. Now, let's kind of put that together. So the polls, the exit polls, they asked a lot of the younger people why they voted the way they did. They said, who did you vote for and why'd you vote? And the two most common answers, right, was because they were influenced by what they had on social media. And we've already proven that that's been controlled by the different parties. It's a political propaganda tool that leans very left. If you're a member of the right, like I am, you get kicked off of Facebook or Twitter. Thank God that Twitter's been taken over by somebody who's more interested in having a centrist point of view and giving everybody freedom of speech, not just one group of people freedom of speech. And then the other thing they said, remember, Joseph Goebbels put this extremely well. He said that if you tell a lie big enough, often enough, people will soon believe it's true. And so because we haven't taught civics in school, because we haven't taught this in school, we were able to have a campaign from the left that says, in order to preserve democracy, you must vote Democrat, because the Republicans, if they get elected, are going to destroy democracy. Well, if you knew our country, if you knew this, the Constitution, if you studied our founding fathers, you would know we don't have a democracy. We never have, we don't now, and hopefully we never will, because democracy is what they wanted to avoid. It's mob rule. Let's take the example of the far west. Sheriff gets together 14 guys, okay? And they are posse, and they're chasing after a cattle rustler. And they catch a guy and they accuse him of cattle rustling, no proof. Out of those 14 guys, they need 8 votes and they can hang him. They don't have to have any proof. They just need 8 votes. Just 8 votes and hang him. Under a constitutional republic, that guy has rights. The 4th, 5th, 6th Amendments, right to a due process. And then when he does go to court for his crime, it must be a unanimous conviction, not majority rules. So we have gone out of our way in our Constitution to avoid democracy, because democracy is mob rule. And yet one party said that we want that and the other party's going to destroy it. Well, I can say that there is some truth to that, because we don't want democracy. We want a constitutional representative republic, which is what was established by our founders. And we want to keep that. That's what gives, and when you say you have your rights, in a democracy, you have no rights. You only have those rights that the majority vote to give you, and the majority can vote to take them away from you once they've given them to you. Whereas with the Constitution, they're guaranteed. Some other things, get this book and read it. This is the discussions by Hamilton and Jay, Madison, Jefferson, and this talks about what they intended the Constitution to be when they wrote it. And another one, let's take the First Amendment, freedom of religion. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So what happened was, when they wrote the Constitution, remember, we were breaking away from England, and England had the Church of England. So whether you were a Jew, a Catholic, or Episcopalian, you tithed 10% of your income to the Church of England. And it was taken out of your income, just like an income tax. And it still is, okay? And we did not want a church of the United States that people were going to tithe to, that people would, whether they believed it, accepted it, or anything else. We wanted to be free of that, so we never wanted to have a church in the United States. And it says, nor prohibit the free exercise thereof. Try to exercise your First Amendment rights and say a prayer in public. Because the liberals have had in the Constitution, or in the Supreme Court, said that if you say a prayer in public, you're establishing a religion. People are going to have to tithe to you. You've got crazy. It's totally crazy. And we've gone away from the Constitution. Try the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the state, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So what does that mean? Well, when was this written? This was written in 1785, or was adopted in 85. And so what happens is, they had a whole bunch of people out there. Remember Concord and Lexington? Those guys were members of the militia. And so they had their weapons in their corner of their house, and right next to the door. And when the bell clanged to assemble, they grabbed their weapon and assembled. That's the weapon they used to combat the British authorities during the Revolution. And so that's what we are members of. We're members of a militia, an on-call. And if you read the Militia Acts, I believe they're 1907 and 1965, it clarifies for you, you are a member of the militia. And so if people try to tell you that this is only for militaries, yeah, kind of, but it also clarifies in 2 acts passed by Congress that it applies to you, that you're a member of that militia, that well-regulated militia, and you're allowed to have arms in order to defend the militia. That joke from El Paso, who has run 3 times for office here in Texas and been defeated 3 times. He is so, and the president's the same way. They're both so against any weapon that has a pistol grip. It automatically becomes an assault rifle. But the joke from El Paso had the 1st Cavalry Division at Fort Bliss. From downtown El Paso, my memories, from where the congressional offices are, to Fort Bliss is no more than a 20-minute drive. So go to Academy and buy yourself an AR-15, take it to Fort Bliss, and then have anybody, there are 12,000 of these on Fort Bliss, have anybody show you the difference between a military assault rifle and a civilian AR-15. There's this thing called a selector switch. So on the military rifle, it has safe, which means you can't fire it, semi, which means you pull the trigger once and 1 bullet goes out, burst, which means you pull the trigger once, 3 bullets come out, or full auto, which is a machine gun version. Pull the trigger once and you go through your magazine at 30 rounds. The civilian AR-15 version only has 2 positions for that selector switch. It has safe and semi-auto. And semi-auto means you pull the trigger once, 1 bullet comes out. So that's the difference between the 2, but nobody's going to tell you that because it doesn't suit their agenda. I remember Nancy Grace having a discussion with the ex-CIA guy who became or not CIA, but he was an undercover Secret Service. He was Secret Service. Dan Bongino. And they were talking about the case in Wisconsin where the kid shot the guy. And Nancy got all flustered and she threw her arms up in the air. She says, he was shot using a machine gun. And she doesn't know what she's talking about. Nancy Grace, you're full of poo-poo. It was not a machine gun. It was a semi-auto, pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out, AR-15. But, these are the things that are determining our votes. People are single issue voters. And of course, the biggest single issue voter is abortion, the Dobbs decision, which basically negated Roe v. Wade. So what I would ask you is the limitations of what Congress is allowed to do. They're only allowed to do what is mentioned in Article 1, Section 8. Let me get it for you here. I mean, it's fairly long. They have a lot of things they can do, but regulating abortion is not one of them. So, here we go. So Section 8 is, Section 7, Section 8. So Section 8 goes from here down this page over here to Section 9. So it's basically 2 pages of this. That's all they're allowed to do. Establish uniform rule of naturalization, coin money, provide for punishment of counterfeiters, establish post offices, promote the progress of science, constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court, define and punish piracies and felonies. I mean, that's the only things it's allowed to do. And if you're not allowed to do it, then anything that's not mentioned in Article 1, Section 8 goes to the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment says, Amendment 10, it's a very short one. It says, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. And the people goes back to the 9th Amendment to the Constitution, which says, the enumeration of this Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So you do have certain rights that can't be disparaged by the government. And so I just, if I can say anything, our country is going in the wrong direction. It needs a radical change. I have a feeling that biblical prophecy is happening. We're going to see a radical change, whether we want it or not. It's going to be externally forced upon us. All I can say is pray, become aware, read the Constitution, get a copy of it, read the articles of, the Federalist Papers. Get a copy of the Articles of Confederation. That's a fantastic book too. Get a copy of The Naked Communist. That's a fantastic book. Read it. Read the intentions and how the Communist Party is infiltrated and destroying our country from within. Get a copy of 2 books by George Orwell. I only brought one from my library because this one's coming true. I see Biden as Napoleon. To those of you who have read the book, you know what I'm talking about. To those of you who haven't, just look for the similarities between the totalitarian dictator who does things even against his own rules that he puts up on the board. They first write them in the dirt, and then they paint them on the wall of the farmhouse. Then they have to change those because the leader is violating the very words that he established as the rule of law. And I see that happening now. And so I think of Biden as being Napoleon the pig. So read this, understand what I'm saying. Get 1984. George Orwell has predicted us like you would not believe. The Federalist Papers to understand what's going on. I'm not going to give you a copy of the Bible. You can do that yourself. But Matthew, I believe it's 18 and Luke 14. No, Luke 24. Oh, anyhow, Luke 24, Matthew. Gosh, I'm sorry. Do me a favor. Remember that we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Be kind, polite, respectful to each other. Don't call people racist. Don't call people Nazi. Don't call people a lot of things that I see going on. That's just not the way we operate. Try to understand where they're coming from so that they can understand where you're coming from, and maybe someday we'll meet in the middle. Be kind, polite, and respectful to each other because togetherness is the key, and by that I mean a unified country, not one that's contentious. So please take care. Bye-bye.